So with the Batman film coming out within a month and a half now, or at least a month and a half, a lot of my content on this channel is going to be Batman oriented. I know I do all types of entertainment on this channel, but I want to be able to cover as much as I can with this upcoming movie. DC is obviously in a very messy situation right now. And I think all of us, even though we constantly get iterations of Batman and just Batman content 24/7, I think a lot of us are really hoping that this Batman movie ends up being the next big thing because it looks like it can be. Now, over the past couple of days, they have started to slowly announce certain things that this movie is going to entail. For example, a couple of days ago, they did announce that the movie is going to be PG-13. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. I am looking forward to the day where we can actually potentially get a Batman film that does push the boundary a little bit more and maybe is PG-14. I mean, as if that really is a big difference. I'm not saying you have to go flat out rated R, almost like Logan. If they were to do that for a Batman film, you wouldn't hear me complaining. I think that would be kind of interesting, but you know what? It is what it is. PG-13. It is nowhere near the end of the world. Also, an Australian IMAX page has apparently revealed that the movie's runtime is 2 hours and 56 minutes. There are some sites that are reporting on this, saying that the movie is 256. It's 2:47. There are even some that are saying it's 3 hours right on the dot. Regardless, it seems like this movie is going to be in that 3-hour range. If this movie does end up being 2:56 or something like that, it will be the second longest superhero movie to ever come out into theaters. I believe that would be right behind Avengers Endgame, which I believe hit theaters at just a little over 3 hours. And I'll just say, give it to me. I love long movies. And maybe that's just because I'm a movie person in general and not just superheroes, of course. I love all types of movies. I could sit here and watch hours of films. That's why when Zack Snyder brought out his 4-hour cut, I wasn't complaining. Lord of the Rings, I could watch those movies nonstop. Quentin Tarantino could come out here and make a 3.5 hour film, and I'll watch it. The Godfathers, they're not my favorite movies in the world, but I do respect them and appreciate them for what they are. Have no problem with the length of those movies. I could keep naming off examples, but this is great. I love this. I have no problem sitting in a theater for 3 hours. The longer, the better. So I really do hope this ends up being confirmed by them that the movie is going to be this long. So I mainly wanted to talk about this article from Collider that at this time just came out an hour ago. And apparently Matt Reeves talks about how this film shares a lot of horror aspects, and it's similarly inspired by the Zodiac film. So there are a couple of things that Matt Reeves said in this interview that I do want to talk about, so let me read what he said. This idea of a place that is corrupt and you try to swim against the tide in order to fight against it and make a difference is quintessential Batman. And at the center of those noir stories is almost always the detective, right? And that's why he is the world's greatest detective. And so this story is, in addition to being almost a horror movie and a thriller and an action movie at its core, it's also very much a detective story. I think that's fantastic. This does need to have a specific change in the sense that Batman needs to be the world's greatest detective. You could argue that in other representations of Batman, especially when it comes to the live action films, we have seen these different types of Batman be a detective. But I would argue that the Batman we have gotten in the movies have never held the title of world's greatest. Of course, we have seen them dive into specific detective skills, but nothing like this is some Sherlock Holmes type shit, which is what we want Batman to be, if not even 5 times more intelligent than that. I would say that when it comes to detective work, one of the best Batman scenes they've ever done that with was in The Dark Knight, when he was analyzing the bullet that was shot into the wall, where he found the clues of Harvey Dent being Joker's next victim. The detective work in that part of the movie is fantastic, and once again, the Dark Knight trilogy has a lot of callbacks to Batman being the world's greatest detective. Even in Ben Affleck's Batman, there is a lot that shows he can be the world's greatest detective. Even in the older films with Michael Keaton, they have world's greatest detective attributes. But this film, I think, truly has the opportunity to show how good Batman is. And the fact that he's trying to put action, thriller, horror all into one film, I think is very ambitious, and it is really interesting too, because when we watch Batman, we of course want that action. We do know that Batman isn't just the world's greatest detective, he might as well be the world's best fighter, considering this guy knows over 127 different types of fighting styles. So we obviously want the action to be at least fun, and in this movie so far, it doesn't just look fun, it looks gritty. He looks ruthless. I've mentioned that many times over in the film, so this is where you're gonna get that fun, exciting action. It's gonna be fun to see how a real representation of what the Riddler would be like in real life is going to go up against a Batman who will potentially be the world's greatest detective compared to the other Batmans we have seen in the past. With that horror aspect, you do see it, especially when you look at the Riddler costume that Paul Dano is wearing. Say what you will about it, because if you don't like it, I completely understand. I don't hate it, but I also don't love it. It does seem to be very dominatrix-like, but regardless, I do understand where that Zodiac killer kind of influence is coming from. If this was me leading the project or something, and if this was my film, and this Riddler was going to be a lot darker and a lot grittier, as he is going to be in the movie, even still, I don't think that would be my first choice for a Riddler costume, but hey, not my movie, not my direction. Maybe when we see the movie in action, maybe it'll grow on us, and maybe there is a very specific reason why he wears what he wears, but we'll have to see. Continuing more about the Riddler, Reeves had to say, the premise of the movie is that the Riddler is kind of molded in an almost Zodiac killer sort of mode, and is killing very prominent figures in Gotham, and they are the pillars of society. These are supposedly legitimate figures. It begins with the mayor, and then it escalates from there. And in the wake of the murders, he reveals the ways in which these people were not everything they said they were. And you start to realize that there's some kind of association. And so just like Woodward and Bernstein, you've got Gordon and Batman trying to follow the clues to try and make sense of this thing in a classic kind of detective story way. You know, on a surface level, you could look at something like that, read that statement, and think, okay, it shares the same values of The Dark Knight. How Joker was going around and killing prolific people, killing these somewhat legitimate figures in the judicial system of Gotham City. But Joker was mainly doing that because he loves chaos. Joker just wanted complete destruction. He just wanted to see everyone be as crazy as he was. Whereas with this, the Riddler is trying to prove that there is a bigger picture, that there is something behind the scenes. And I gotta say, something like that makes me feel a little more that the Court of Owls may be in some way involved in this film. Maybe not in this film, but the future of this story. If anybody has not seen my video from about a week ago, I did make a video about a special guest cameo appearance in this movie nearing the end. And I basically rounded off my personal possibilities to either being the Joker, because you can't have a Batman trilogy without Joker, or the potential appearance of the Court of Owls. And I certainly think that the Court of Owls would fit a world like this, because clearly they are putting an emphasis on the government or the judicial system, or even just the fact of a society in general. And the Court of Owls would 100% be able to affect that type of stuff from the background. They'd be able to control these legitimate figures like puppets. All of this seems to be very interesting, and I would love to know everyone's thoughts on how they feel about the film coming out, which is, like I said, very, very soon. If you like this whole idea of, this horror aspect of the film and the Zodiac influence, and if you are excited to see more of the world's greatest detective come into play into this film more than it ever has before. The more I see from this movie and the more I read about it, I actually am very excited, because I do truthfully believe Matt Reeves understands Batman and he has this specific vision for his vision. I'm really appreciating the depth and creativity he has done for this film so far. And we haven't even seen the movie yet, so hopefully when we do, it does hold up to that. With only a month and a bit to go, we are starting to get a lot more news now about, screen time and the rating of the film and photos. We even got new photos yesterday, 2 new posters. One of Batman and Catwoman looking over the city skyline, and then another of Batman's close-up where you can see a little bit of stubble on his masked face, which I think is in a way genius. And many people probably didn't really look into this, but I think it was really cool because you got someone like Batman who's constantly out at night fighting crime. Guy literally leaves no time to do anything in between him trying to rest up to go back out at night. So of course, the time this guy has to shave his face isn't always going to be there. So sometimes he's going to be going out as Batman with some stubble on his face. And I think just the attention to detail for this film, it's going to be next level. Even simply too, we've seen in the trailers, the cinematography is absolutely gorgeous. And if this movie is literally 3 hours of camera shots the way we've seen them in the trailer, this might go down as one of the greatest cinematography films ever. But do leave in the comments below what you think of all of this news. But that is it for this one, everyone. Make sure to leave in the comments below what you think of all this news. And until next time, I will talk to you all very soon.